All right, so I did this same session on Tuesday of this week and actually got lots of feedback from you guys as far as things that IS can implement to make it easier on you. So I want to open up that opportunity at the end. If there are things that you're like, hey, this is quirky, or this seems like I have to trick the system, or whatever that is, please feel free to share that with me at the end, and I'll take notes and put a help ticket together. I mean, I actually have like six items that I think could improve the system. So I'm always all ears for that. Anything that makes it easier for you and subsequently makes it easier for me to teach the new reps, I love. So we're going to get started this morning. I really am going to be pretty basic about everything. If all of y'all will go ahead and mute yourselves, that way I don't have any feedback. It'll make it easier for everybody. And then at the end, if you do have questions, feel free to ask anything. This is kind of your chance to learn. So I'll just kind of go over the basics, as well as maybe a few advanced items that maybe you weren't aware of, or possibly you overlooked in an email from IT or IS, which happens to all of us. So guys, make sure that you're muted. And then also in regards to calling in, you need to be on the iPad in order to see what's going to be on the screen. You can't just be calling in on this one on a phone. All right, I am recording this. However, with people being on vacation, it'll probably take a couple weeks for the recording to be prepared and to be a YouTube link. So just kind of sit tight if that is a need. That is something that we're going to be able to get done. All right, so let me share my screen. And Z, do me a favor and unmute yourself and tell me if you can see Quest pulled up.
I can.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, so I'm using Team Atlanta right now. Nicole Langford is part of Team Atlanta. I picked on her partner, Shelby, on the last one, so I'm going to pick on Nicole today. So when you're looking at your project pipeline, which you can tell I've got it highlighted right here in red, the things that you need to be managing on a daily basis is basically this estimated order date column. All right, if something is past due, it will highlight in red, so it's super obvious that, hey, I need to be looking at this. Also, your RVP every single day gets a past due notification. And I know I've seen communication, they forward that to you. So basically that's your turn to do some communicating with whomever the customers are involved to get an answer and to maybe, edit the estimated order date. Maybe it's a project that's been put on hold. Whatever the case is, you can do all of those items. All right. So what else you can do from this screen right here, and I can tell pretty quickly some items as well as your RVP can, but most importantly, you guys should be able to look at this fairly quickly. What I look at and what Bill Blackstock looks at is I'm going to be pulling this estimated order date, and I'm going to look at what's coming in the next 30 days. So you can see that Nicole Langford's got quite a few coming in the next 30 days. What should happen if it's coming in the next 30 days, because she's the one who entered that, all these win percentages should be sitting at 90. If you've got something that's supposed to order in the next 30 days, there should not be anything sitting at 10% or 50%. Otherwise, the information is not valid. Okay, 10%, and we'll talk about the ratios in a second, is really early on. So more than likely, these need to be adjusted. Okay, so that's something quickly that you can go through and look at. What else you can do from this screen is if, let's say, Nicole decided that this Beacon Hill project that she's got sitting at 50%, slated to order on the 13th, if she needs to follow up on that, she can quickly just go to the pencil and edit the information that she needs to, and it will save it and update it accordingly. We'll talk about this copy feature here in a second. That's only about a week old, that feature, and it's actually going to be super useful, especially I saw Austin on here. It should be very helpful for him with his holiday retirement business, as well as any of you guys that have standards in place. Now, what else you can do is if you're in here and you determine you followed up on this Beacon Hill job and the customers that you discussed the information with, they say, oh, actually, that job isn't happening anymore, they lost funding. If that's the case and it just needs to go away, you can just delete right here with the X, and it removes it. Now, if, let's say, that this Beacon Hill job actually got ordered and you failed to tag it in your pricing approval email to this project, you can simply hit close over here. And what pops up is it's asking you, okay, why are we closing this Beacon Hill project? And if it was something that got ordered that you just failed to tie the information together, you'll just hit shipped complete and close the project. And then you can see that there's other options. Maybe the job was abandoned, maybe a competitor won the project, or other. And you don't have to fill in information here unless you just choose. Okay? So those are some quick things that you can do from that screen. Let me go back to where I was. All right, so let's go into a project, and let's say that this Beacon Hill project, I'm just going to go ahead and open it up and see what's happening with it. So Beacon Hill is the job name for obvious reasons. Nicole's got it sitting at 50%. Veenendaal Cave, which is the A&D firm. So this is going to change in the coming weeks. This term specifier will actually say A&D because it's a little bit confusing the way it is now. There's no flooring contractor thus far on this. But you can see Nicole's got notes throughout here. So you can see her follow-up. She kind of uses this as a timeline to add notes. All right, so you can edit that from here if you chose to. You don't have to go back out. You can edit up here. What else you can do is, let's say that this Veenendaal Cave project called Beacon Hill is being specified in Atlanta by V-Cave, but it's actually going into Nashville. So what Nicole wants to do is she wants to tell Carly Jean in Nashville, hey, this project's coming. If you get any pricing inquiries, please contact me first and we'll handle pricing together. So if you need to share this project with another rep because it's your spec that's going out of your territory, you simply choose the rep that you would like to. So in this case, it's Carly Jean. Once you select Carly Jean's name, you can type a little note to her if you should choose to, and then hit share. And what that does is this project pops up in Carly Jean's projects. Let me show you how you can find that. If Carly Jean wanted to look for this project, the way that she could do it is, let me figure out where it is. Right here under sharing. So once you are in your project pipeline, let's pretend I'm Carly Jean up here. Carly Jean may want to look and see, hey, what projects are being shared with me? I want to make sure that I'm following up for Nicole and see if any of my flooring contractors have heard about this, whatever that looks like. So all she's going to do is pop over here when she's under her project pipeline where it says more options, and it drops down, and she wants to know all the projects that are being shared with her in all territories. So once you select that, and right now Nicole doesn't have any projects, but if she had shared that with Carly Jean, all of those projects would show up. So she could actually be going back and forth with Nicole if she needs to, or add any information. So the beauty of sharing a project is if Carly Jean ends up getting pricing inquiries, she now can go into that project, just like we did a second ago where I showed you how she could find those, and input the pricing that was given to those flooring contractors based on Nicole's discretion. And anytime there's any manipulation in that project, meaning any notes are added, anything's edited or updated by either Nicole or Carly, the other rep gets notification in an email saying, hey, there's been activity in the Beacon Hill project. And so it kind of alerts you to take a look at that and see what the activity is. Therefore, you don't have this huge email chain to track all of this back and forth and save it in a folder. You don't have to deal with all that. It all lives in Quest, and you just share the project in Quest. Okay, so that I wanted to go over super quickly. Let's just pretend we're going to do a new project. So you've got the project name, which is obvious. One of the things that folks get hung up on is the designer is not giving me any project information. They're being difficult, whatever the case is. Just realize that a lot of the times they're not being difficult. They've maybe signed a non-disclosure agreement where they cannot discuss which end users they're working with. So in that case, I would just say it's HOK, it's a design firm, and I would say Susie. So Susie at HOK is the person you're working with, all right? And you may or may not ever get any information on who the end user is until it goes out to bid. And that's okay. You can adjust the project name or edit it later if you choose to, or if it makes it easy for you to remember that it was HOK Susie, keep it that way. So just don't let that kind of stop you by any means. City and state, you do not have to fill out unless you choose to. Review date. Let's say that, for instance, in this scenario, we're just sending samples to Susie with HOK. I'm going to set a review date for 5 days from today. And what that does is it goes to my calendar, and in 5 days from today, which let's just pretend we're talking business days, so next Wednesday the 4th, I'm going to get a calendar invite at 7 a.m. that says HOK Susie. That will prompt me to go into my projects and to read what I need to follow up on. So if you're not using this review date tool, it's the same as the call log follow-up tool. You're really doing yourself a disservice. I think a lot of times we lose specifications by simply not following up on sample orders and not following up, even if it's a flooring contractor who's taking our books out for discretionary business. We just kind of give pricing and hope that it sticks. So set yourself a review date. It really is easy to do, and it makes your life so much easier and more organized. If there's a bid date, you can fill it out. If there's not, you don't have to. Estimated order date. In this example where HOK, we're simply sending samples, we are very early on. Kick your estimated order date out 6 months. Just put it at the end of June. Because you're really early on at this point. You have no idea. We don't even know if we're going to be in the game at this point. So just kick it out 6 months, okay? Now, in this example, we've got these win percentages. If I'm just sending samples, it's 10%. Now, other items that might be at 10%. Let's say that you belong to a networking group and you end up finding out at a breakfast meeting that a major university in your area is building a new rec center. It's not going to go in 17. It's probably not even going to start till 18, but you want to keep that in front of you. That would be a 10%, okay? 50% is when either an A&D or an NU spec goes out to bid. All right, so at 50%, you might have a bid date. All right, so HOK, this Susie HOK job goes out to bid, and it actually ends up that the flooring contractors call it 101 Peachtree Suite 100. Okay, so if you wanted to change it to that, you could, or you could leave it at HOK Susie. All right, so 50% is going out to bid, you're giving pricing. 50% is also a flooring contractor takes your books out for discretionary business. So anytime you're giving pricing to a customer, and I don't mean A&D firm pricing like material or install pricing, I mean it's either being bid or it's going to a flooring contractor. That's 50%. 90% means it's coming in the next 30 days. Pricing has been given. We know yardage, we know style, we know color. Okay? So at 90%, why Project Pipeline is also extremely important. A, it helps to kind of track where you are against your forecast. So for obvious reasons, that's important to you and your RVP. But also, anything that's hitting 90%, planning and production at the mill will start to get a hold of. And especially if it's orders that are very large, or if it's items that maybe we have to add, or we have to order outside yarn, so we need outside help. The mill will start to communicate with you to see, you know, hey, have you discussed this with your customer? Is this really slated to come in the next 30 days? Those kind of items, because we may need to get prepared from a planning and production standpoint in order to meet this deadline. Okay, so that's why the percentages are really important as well. So let's pretend that this is a 50% and that it has a bid date of, we're going to say this job bid yesterday. So if a job bid yesterday and it has a true bid date, my review date to myself is actually going to be the following day. The reason that is because I want the following day, in case I just, you know, hit the ground running and I'm like calling on 6 or 7 people, I may forget to do this. So if this job bid yesterday on the 28th, this HOK Susie job, and it bid yesterday, I'm going to set a reminder for today, because what I'm going to do today is I'm going to find out who the awarded GC is on that job. Once I figure that out, I'm going to then call that awarded GC and ask to speak to the project manager for the HOK job that just went out to bid. And I'm going to ask them, you know, a few questions. Hey, I'm Christina with J&J Flooring Group. I was the product that was called out in the spec. Wanted to see if you've awarded your flooring sub yet. They will say yes or no. And then I'm also going to ask, you know, construction timeline was, it looks like, end of June. Is that still the case? And are we on budget thus far? And so I'm going to take that information and I'm going to add a note based on all the information that GC gave me. So I use this as kind of a rolling timeline, basically. Okay. So market segment for this, I'm just going to say that it's a corporate job just for sake of argument. The specifier field here is HOK. Start typing it in and give it a second, because my sick joke is it's going to space and back, but it is. And let's say that it is Atlanta's HOK that's bidding it. The key contact, if you don't see your contact listed here, it's because you don't have Susie as a contact under HOK Atlanta. Okay, and you can easily add her as a contact under them by just adding her in Quest. Okay, so the end user, I don't know who this end user is. It's not one that I actively call on, so I'm going to leave that blank right now. The primary flooring contractor, if this is a 50% and this is a job that goes out to bid, an HOK spec, the primary flooring contractor is whom I'm protecting. So in this case, I'm going to say I'm protecting Walker Interiors. So I'm going to go ahead and type that out, select that, come over here to my key contact, and it's Kirk that I'm protecting. And so Kirk's price with Walker Interiors goes down here. That is the product that is going to be listed and his price. So let's just say that it's City Blocks. So start typing City Blocks. And I don't want the discontinued. HOK selected City Blocks 2 modular. And let's say they selected Palace Square. And let's say it's 1,500 square yards. And then Walker Interiors, because he's my primary, his price for City Blocks carpet tile is going to be $14.95. Okay. Now, if there were more styles to add to this spec, you would just hit Save More Styles. This City Blocks modular would pop up in your grid, and you can move on. Now, what else I want to do before I X out of here is I'm going to say X, Y, Z flooring contractors. Pricing is $17 a square yard. Okay, so basically, we all understand that Walker Interiors is who I want to get this job. But let's say that an 11th hour flooring contractor popped up. It was the GC's best friend that he wants to have the last look. He may get it at $17 a yard because maybe he's got lower overhead or maybe he pays lower wages for labor, whatever that looks like. So I always still want to make a note of what I priced everyone else at. That way I'm in the know of, oh yeah, I gave him 17. Okay. Now, what else you can do from this field, especially if you're like a Stacy Santoro in New York who does a lot of strike-off business, or in any of our major metros, if you have a strike-off for this project, because we all realize you've got to have a project in first, so you can put some generic information in to get your project to then go to that strike-off button. If you want to add the strike-off, because we're at the point that, yep, they like that strike-off, we got yardage numbers and we got pricing numbers, and you want to kind of add that information, you can hit this strike-off, this project, and that strike-off number loads right here. It'll say REQ, whatever your salesperson's number, and that strike-off. Now, if there are multiple revisions of the strike-off, which we all know happen, all of those will load, and you select which one it is. Now, in Stacy's case, she does a lot of, like I mentioned, a lot of strike-off business, and what she will actually do is she may use strike-offs from previous projects in a new project. So if that's the case, Stacy or yourself would go here to strike off other projects, and all your REQs will load, and you choose which strike-off you want. Okay. One other thing I want to show you guys, you have this little alternate button. So if you click alternate and you hit save more styles, oh, I did this the other day. Must have a price. Oh, okay. So let's hit save more styles. Sorry about that. I always go backwards on this. So let's say that this HOK project that's gone out to bid, and I still want Walker Interiors to win it. Let's say that this is really being used as a pricing exercise. So HOK's client really prefers carpet tile, but maybe they can't afford it. Okay, let me actually go backwards on this for a second. Okay, so what you need to enter first is enter your least expensive option first. So in this case, it's going to be the Broadloom, still 1,500 yards, and the price is going to be $9.95 for Walker Interiors. So if I hit Save More Styles, your City Blocks Broadloom is up here at the top. Let me delete this guy out. Yes, I want to delete this tile. So what you can do is you got your Broadloom price for 1,500 yards at $9.95 for Walker Interiors. Project value is about 15 grand. So you don't want to skew your project numbers. And like I said, this is just a pricing exercise. HOK wants to know if their client can even afford carpet tile. So enter your least expensive first. Go back in and enter your carpet tile. And Walker Interiors price is $14.95. And hit alternate and hit save more styles. So if you notice that carpet tile quote is in a different color, it's highlighted. Okay, what that means is that's kind of best case scenario. If their customer can afford the carpet tile, then your project value is about 22.5. If they can't, your project value is about 15. So what actually shows up when yourself and your RVP are looking at the project value for this job, it's going to be this 15. If you drill in, it will tell you that this is the alternate. Okay? Because what you don't want to happen is you don't want these two numbers to be combined and it skews your data where you think this one project is going to be almost $40,000. Okay? And if you were done with all your inputting data, you would just hit save and done, and it would show up in your project pipeline. I'm going to cancel that out because I don't want to mess up Nicole's information. Okay, let me check my notes to make sure. Okay, let's talk about this little option. So let's say that, no, sorry. All right, let's say that this job that we're looking at, especially this one right here that Nicole's got, DaVita Dialysis. I actually really like to see that on there because that's a Shaw spec. I think Z would be well aware of that. So one of the things that this could end up being is that this could be a standard for the company as well as for the country for DaVita Dialysis clinics. Okay. So what Nicole may end up wanting to do, or Austin, who's doing holiday retirement, is there may be multiple of these projects being ordered throughout the year. Okay, and what you don't want to have to do is start a new project every time for DaVita Dialysis and say, oh, this one's going in Arizona, and just having to always start a new project. So what you can do is select the original project that you have, hit copy, and it's going to ask you, do you want to copy this project? And what pops up is basically kind of your template for that project, and it allows you to edit information as you see fit. So maybe, you know, this one's going to go into Arizona, so she could enter Arizona. Maybe this one has a different flooring contractor that's going to bid it. So whatever that looks like, different yardage because it's a different size clinic. Maybe they're working on 3 different styles. So this particular clinic is using timber versus strata. So you can easily just manipulate the information as well as the estimated order date, and it allows you to just copy the project versus always having to enter all the information each time. Okay? I didn't mention this in the beginning, but just in case you're not aware, even on an iPad, you can sort all of these. So if you wanted to sort by win percentage, you could absolutely do that. If you wanted to sort by created dates, you could do that. It defaults to sort by estimated order date because obviously that's kind of what you should be managing. But you do have the ability just to tap above the filter there, and it will filter it accordingly. All right, so I'm kind of done speaking, if you will, and I apologize that it took that long, but if you have questions, go ahead and unmute yourself and let me know what your questions are, and I'll be happy to kind of walk through those. Anybody?
Christina, I have a question. This is Nicole.
Hey.
So at the beginning you were saying if something is set with an order date within 30 days, that it should always have 90%. So I guess I haven't been doing that because sometimes I'm pretty sure it's going to order within that 30 days, but I don't know who was awarded it yet, or they haven't selected a color yet, or something like that, so I haven't been able to move it to 90. So is that not okay?
Well, this is my philosophy. If it's coming, and this, I shouldn't say this is mine, this is Bill's philosophy. If it's coming in the next 30 days, we should know color. We should definitely know who's been awarded that project. And if not, then it needs to be pushed out because it can't be coming that soon. Now, it could, every now and then, it may happen that a customer hasn't decided color and maybe they pull the trigger last minute and they're like, yep, Harvard Square, City Block 2 tile, that's it, we're doing it. And the order comes in or lapse. And that can occur. I mean, we all have lived that life. But for the majority of the time, if it's coming in 30 days, it should be at 90% and all the information should be entered. Otherwise, it needs to probably be pushed out date-wise and sitting at 50% until we get further information.
Hey, Christina, it's Laura.
Hey.
I have a question. So I know you mentioned that the specifier should only be A and D, and that that's going to be changing soon.
Yeah.
I do, however, we have contractors that bring us in on a job and basically they specified our product on the job, and it is nice to put them under specifier because then we can see how much business they've specified versus just a spec. Is there a way that we'll be able to still see that moving forward when it changes to just A and D?
No, not really. The reason that I have asked for it to be changed is because when I'm coaching, and even if I went into probably any of you guys right now, you will have a flooring contractor or an end user listed here as the specifier. Technically, that's only supposed to be the A&D firm, and that's why I think the term is very confusing. If it's a flooring contractor who spec'd it, it needs to sit just like this does. So what this tells me, without even calling Nicole and asking her, is that for DaVita Dialysis, Premier Contract took us out because he's listed as a flooring contractor. So the only way you'll be able to tell is by going under their sales history and starting to pull by side mark, basically which was theirs, which was ours, basically.
Okay.
Hey, Christina, this is Robert.
Hey.
We have an initiative with StarNet, so knowing when those guys in particular get involved in stuff and specify us, I don't, and that would be good to have. And, you talk about the side marks. We have a lot of contractors that enter in things, A, without a side mark, or B, with like a PO number. And so to have to go back and find all of that, it just, I don't know if there's a way to rethink this whole thing. I understand where you're coming from specifying, but I know in my part of the world, and then I know in Blaine's part of the world, there's a lot of areas where flooring contractors drive the business. And so it's nice to be able to see and not have to sit there and separate all that stuff. So I don't know if that's something we can still debate or not, but I know it's not for this particular thing, but it's just, I don't know, because I'm trying to coach our folks for that. And it also helps when we have that conversation with them to say, look, we did X amount of business with you, 80% of this I drove to you, 20% you drove to us, or 95-5 or whatever it may be. I'd hate to see that go away as a specifier. So.
Well, and I think that that'll be an IF discussion, and no, it's definitely not like too far gone where we can't have that discussion. So don't let that, cause any fret for anyone. But I'm sure that there's a way that they can tag it and code it accordingly. That if there was a project entered and the flooring contractor is sitting like the one in front of me with Premier Contract, and that pricing approval comes through, they will be tagged as, the specifier. I'm air quoting, you can't see me, as the specifier. So therefore we can, still capture that data.
So long as we can do that, and I don't know if these things are tied together, because that was my understanding is all this was tied together whenever the order came in, but
Right.
as long as we can do that, I don't have a problem with it. I don't know if any RVP.
Yeah.
But
basically, as long as the project is in and the pricing approval comes through and we can tag it to that project and we tie all that data together, it will be fine. That shouldn't be an issue. But I'm writing myself a note, and I'll add another health ticket for this session, and we can discuss it so that way we can make sure that it stays that way. Mm-hmm. Okay, good feedback. Anybody else have feedback or questions?
I have a question, Christina.
Yeah.
Is it still set up, and I might have missed it in the first couple minutes, to where when you try to go in and put a flooring contractor in, and if the account hasn't been opened, it won't drop down in the feed, so you can't actually put it in there until they open an account? Has that changed, or is that going to stay the same and we'll just have to wait and then go back and put them in later?
Well, if it is, so that's a good question. If you are trying to fill one of these fields and you are typing in whatever the customer's name is, mm-hmm. and they never autofill, the reason is it's because they don't have an account. Okay, but let's have this discussion. There's two types of accounts. There's purchasing accounts, which are a flooring contractor, and then there's non-purchasing accounts, which are end users and A&D, typically. Mm-hmm. So every customer, if we are calling on them, as far as I'm concerned, and we're going to continue to call on them, needs an account. Doesn't mean they get a purchasing account through financial services. It just means that they get an account number so we can then tie all of this data together and they're going to show up in your fields. Okay. So, Susan, in regards to a flooring contractor, yes, there should be no reason that we have a flooring contractor that doesn't have a buying account. They need financial. So my answer to that is, if it's a flooring contractor, they should have terms through financial services and they should have a purchasing account.
Yeah, I've come across this year quite a bit of like new ones that are popping up. So mm-hmm. I've been running into the problem, not a lot, but just every once in a while that, until they have set up that account, that I can't log them in. I think maybe a couple of them just in the past like 4 months.
Yeah. And that, it doesn't take, as long as the flooring contractor fills out the credit app, so a lot of times they're the actual hindrance, if you will.
Yeah.
It takes financial services 24 to 48 hours to give them an account number. Okay. So if it's a problem, it's usually 99% of the time on the flooring contractor side because they haven't filled out the account, or the application, I should say.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a very good question. But anytime, like especially in your pricing approval, if you can't find the information, like the customer's name or even in your project or your call log, it's because they don't have an account.
Right.
All right. Good question.
Christina, I have a question about that, though.
Yeah.
This is Nikki Lee again. I'm chatty today, I guess. I have a few flooring contractors who do not do business on credit. They pay cash every time, and or they are really small and don't do a ton of commercial and don't need terms or want them. So in those situations, I've just kind of been leaving that blank because that will go through like a J&J miscellaneous sales.
Right.
So is it out of the question to have a way to create an account for those companies without making it like a credit terms account?
No, you'll just create it just like you do for an A&D firm or an end user. So you'll just edit that prospect. Do what?
If I go in there and try to edit that prospect, I don't have the option to add them as an account, as a FC.
Okay. The only way you'll be able to circle around that then is send a help ticket, kind of state the why for that, and they'll have to kind of open it up. It's because they're a flooring contractor then that it's blocking you from being able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just send in a help ticket and just say, hey, I need this to be an account that's created, but they're always going to be, you know, a pay by cash or a J&J miscellaneous. They don't need a financial services purchasing account, but they do need an account number so I can tie data to them.
Hey, Christina, it's Joe here in Chicago.
Hey.
Hey, just regarding that last question that Nicole had, I have a few actually, a few contractors that only want to pay cash, or they pay, you know, they want to do like, you know, check by fax or whatever. They don't want credit terms or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, I'd have to look back now, but I believe they're in the system. They're set up with an account, and I think it's just set up as, you know, pay up front, you know.
Yeah,
so
like CBD kind of thing.
Exactly. So I think you just still got to get the contractor in touch with financial services so that they can set their account up that way.
Okay.
So I think it still can be done. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then my other question would be just at the beginning of your presentation here, you were talking about like when you're looking at your project list and you're updating things, and say you're like, you know, you find out that a project, you know, is canceled due to, you know, maybe the budget's not there, or for whatever reason, maybe you find out, you know, it's getting, you know, it's going in a different direction, you know, it's going to go all hard surface or something. And you were saying, you know, just hit the delete button. Is there a difference between hitting delete the project versus going into the, you know, edit the project and selecting lost? Are they the one and the same, or?
Delete, I would use delete, especially if I'm a new rep in a territory and I'm cleaning up the pipeline. Okay, so I'm like sorting through 100 or more projects and I'm trying to see if there's validity from the rep before me. I would be using delete to kind of close some of those out. Now,
okay.
Close is your other option. I especially use close if, let's say, that another manufacturer got it, or it was already shipped. Let's say that I'm new in the territory and they're like, yeah, moron, DaVita Dialysis was already shipped. And you're like, oh, okay, just the new person trying to figure it out. I'm going to hit close in that case, and I'm going to say shipped complete.
Okay.
So I use close most of the time for if a competitor got it or if it's already been shipped.
Gotcha. Okay.
Anything else for delete is just because I'm like trying to kind of go through there, especially being new, and I'm just trying to clean up the database. Either way, don't freak out, anyone. If you choose delete or close, Gabby can open them back up if it was a mistake. Okay, so you'll just send a help ticket. Hey, accidentally closed Beacon Hill project. Can you please help me with that? Or whatever the case may be.
Cool.
Okay. One thing I was going to take the time just to go through how you edit a prospect to make sure that they get an account. So the quick way to see if somebody's got an account is when you go under your prospects, if there's a number in parentheses, that means that these folks have accounts, whether they're purchasing or non-purchasing. So I'm going to go in here to this A&D, which looks like 1180 Peachtree/Hines. And if I want them to have an account, because I'm Nicole and I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely, we're doing business with these folks. Let's see. I haven't done this in a while. Go to edit. And when you scroll down, it says right here towards the bottom, create account, yes or no. So 99% of the time, A&D firms and end users don't purchase, but they still need a non-purchasing account because what happens is then they auto-populate in those fields. So for pricing approval, their name will pop up if they're the specifier and you want to tie it to them. Or your project pipeline if you want to tie information to them. Or your call logs if you want to tie information. So if you want them to show up in any of those drop-down fields, you have to say yes for create an account. The only time you would not create an account for a prospect, and I would probably argue I'm not sure why they're a prospect, is if it's a one-time sale. So if, for instance, it's First Baptist Church in Nashville, Tennessee, and we happen to sell them carpet. First Baptist Church is not somebody Carly Jean is probably going to darken their door because it's not going to be repeat business for maybe another 15 to 20 years when they look for carpet again. Unless First Baptist Church is like a huge school and it has a large campus, and it might be a big end user, a mega church that Carly Jean focuses on. But the most of the time, they're not going to be. So my rule of thumb is if it's a flooring contractor, unless there's some sort of, oddity, like we've just discussed, they get a purchasing account by filling out a credit app through financial services. Within 24 to 48 hours, financial services will assign them an account number. If it's an A&D firm or end user, they also get an account by editing and going to hit yes. And that allows them to have a non-purchasing account number, which all that does is allows us to tie data together. Sample orders as well get tied that way. So I just kind of wanted to point that out to you guys, especially if it wasn't something that you have ever done, but you've wondered, why are these people not showing up in the drop-down fields? I mean, they're in Quest. I call on them. That's how I got their information, simply because they don't have an account number listed next to their prospect name. Any other questions that I could fulfill?
Hey, Christina, it's Z. I had a question.
Yeah.
When someone orders through our online system and the order then comes into our email, it doesn't look like it forces them to put a project name next to it. That's correct, right?
Correct, yeah, because sometimes it may be a non-disclosure type of thing where they can't, so they may just call it samples.
Gotcha. Is there any way to heavily enforce it? It really helps when you know what it is, because I've had 2 projects now where someone comes to me, we talk about 5 different products, they say they're going down route A, all of a sudden route A turns into option B without me knowing, and then it's 2 floors instead of 1 floor, and it just kind of turns into, well, what the heck is this thing, and I'm chasing it around. And the only reason is, in that scenario, it would be great, but they don't necessarily have to do it, but just a way online where it's like, this really helps us if you can tell us this instead of them glancing over it, because I don't think for one project I've had a project name when it does get ordered.
Yeah. Well, yeah, unfortunately, I think the feeling is from a marketing perspective, if we mandate it or don't allow them to move further into the sample order process, that we could lose business that way by making it more difficult for them. I will tell you, they have the option, obviously, and they can choose to do what they want with it. Yeah. Even when they call in, they are asked, would you like, what side mark or how would you like us to, reference this sample order? So they're asked, but it's really at their discretion as to how they want to handle it.
Gotcha. So it's more of a try to educate and kind of get your clients to start doing it more.
Correct. Yeah, okay. Why it's important kind of a thing. But, like I said, a lot of the times if they did sign a non-disclosure, they can't give you any more information.
Right.
They couldn't even give you an address name because obviously if you're smart, which I've talked about in training, I love when I get address names because I just simply Google it and find out who the customer is living there. So, yep. A lot of times they won't even give you that. So, it's not them trying to be difficult all the time. It really is truly just about what they signed from a non-disclosure agreement.
Sure. Okay.
Good question, Z. Any other questions out there? Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for your time this morning. If you have further questions, because I actually got a ton on Tuesday, please send me a screenshot of maybe what you're having problems with, and I can easily diagnose stuff with a screenshot much quicker than going back and forth. So just let me know if you need any help. But good luck, and I hope you guys have a happy New Year. Thanks so much for your time.
Hey, you too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Really
for